Namaste, everybody. My name is Deepti Jolly. I'm on the board for Canadian Organization for Hindu Heritage Education. It's a pleasure to have everybody here, especially Richa, who's an esteemed speaker for us today. And she's a founder for CasteFiles. And as you know, the theme, which is understanding the proposed M128 Caste bill and what the next steps are. And she's a very, very relevant speaker here for us. Before we start, I just want to level set some of the expectations. CoHHE, CoHHE stands for equality and is against any form of discrimination, including caste. Just everybody to note that this session will be recorded. So if you are not comfortable being on the camera and being recorded, you still have time to exit. The meeting will be for about an hour, and everybody will stay on the mute. So please continue to stay on mute. We will let everybody go into the chat room, open the chat for everybody after the presentation and the discussion between Ragini and Richa is over. And if there are any questions for Q&A, we'll open the chat at that time. Again, everybody will be muted for the duration of the session until we open the Q&A. Ragini ji, do you want to start the chant? And then I just want to go ahead and give a brief introduction of CoHHE yourself, and then I'll give it over to you.
Thank you, Deepti, and thank you. Welcome, Richa. Just going to chant to welcome everybody and put us in a good space, because this is coming from our heart to protect Dharma. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste to all.
Thank you, Ragini ji. So as we jump into the session, I just want to give everybody, those who don't know about CoHHE, a quick intro. CoHHE's mission is to educate, promote, and celebrate Hindu heritage. Our greater vision is to build a societal culture where Hindu heritage is valued with equity and inclusivity. And we are aspiring to be the global voice for peace and harmony by propagating foundational values of our Hindu Dharma. We have been engaged through and through with diverse community members across the board. And the idea is to raise awareness about Hindu heritage and people understand how deep and wide our culture is. Education being the foundation, we also want to make sure that we are raising awareness about any hatred or racial discrimination of Hindus. And we want to raise our voice against that and build a motion where everybody is engaged and involved in this fight against Hinduphobia and Hindu hate. Now, Dr. Ragini Sharma, she is the president for CoHHE, and in her professional life, she has worked over 25, 26 years with individuals, families, and communities of diverse backgrounds to support their human dignity and economical, social, and political rights. She's got extensive experience working and volunteering, with seniors, new immigrants, children in diverse spaces, and within the community and across the communities. She's also been a volunteer at the International Art of Living Foundation, and she's a teacher of happiness program there, which is a spirituality-based wellness and health program. Now I'm gonna just quickly go through the agenda for this meeting. Raginiji, if you don't mind moving to the next, the agenda page. Thank you. So I will hand it over to Raginiji, who will introduce Richa. And then the idea is that Richa is going to speak about her interview with NDP MP Don Davies, who has proposed the Caste bill, M128, the implications for it on our Hindu community. After this discussion, we will talk about the next steps, and then we will open the chat for Q&A, and then there will be final closing remarks. So over to you, Raginiji.
Thank you so much. And a warm welcome to all of those who are here and who are not watching the India and South Africa cricket match. This is a very serious matter, but you know, we are recording this so we can share it widely. I want to give a very warm welcome to Richa Gautam. She's such a dynamic young person. I'm so proud of her, and it's great to collaborate with her because she brings to us, as the founder of CasteFiles, she brings to us international view of what's happening across the world. So without much delay, I want to bring her, and I'm going to pin you, Richa, so everybody can see you as you speak. Thank you so much for joining, and over to you, Richa.
Thank you, Raginiji. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And, you know, for the collaborative opportunity, it's really, really wonderful that we can talk today because, as you know, America has been the center point of a lot of the discussion on caste. And of course, Canada is not far behind. So we have actually been at the center of it all. Of course, UK, the United Nations, even Australia, and of course, India has seen the rumbles of the heightened decibels in the caste discourse all over the world. So without further ado, I do want to talk about you know, what's going on in North America or what we have experienced there. And I'm sure there'll be some learnings. But Raginiji, with the previous slide itself, you know, I do want to step back before we go into those details and talk about, you know, first of all, why we come to America. Why is caste coming to America is an important question. Well, why do we come to America or Canada as, you know, immigrants to a Western country? I think one of the most important thing is we are all chasing that American dream when we come to America. We're looking to gain, you know, experience of a global experience, build a future, you know, live a life where our children are safe, they have education, and you know, have opportunity, because America is supposed to be that land that recognizes merit. Canada is that land of merit and multiculturalism, as Don Davies said to me multiple times during his interview. So that is the immigrant dream for the Indian American or Indo-Canadian. And there is always a struggle, you know, our identity is of an immigrant, you know, and were we always able to come to America? Not really. We came to America after the 1964 Civil Rights Act was passed, and when there were equal opportunities for African Americans and Black Americans and everybody. And in 1965, there was an amendment of the Immigrant Act. And after that, it was an open opportunity for Indians to come and make America their home. I'm sure Canada went through some similar exercises, but I'm talking about the US right now, where we are called as the white adjacent. And how did that even happen is mind-boggling, because if you think of it, we are more Black adjacent than anyone else. We, as I said, could not come to America before 1965 when the Black Americans got their rights. Only after that were we able to migrate to America. The consulates in American consulate in India went around schools and asked students to make America their home. That is how engineers, doctors, qualified, skilled Indians have come to America and have continuously made America the better, brought civilization, contributed to its economy, been the bulwark of Silicon Valley, at NASA, scientists, professors. We see them everywhere, and they're upholders of economic value to America and civilization. We have the lowest crime rates. We are the richest ethnic minority. And so we do that not because we come with a lot of wealth and a lot of privilege, but because despite everything, we struggle, we work hard work and merit is what we think of America as, And Black adjacency also, if you look at indentured labor, when slavery ended, after Black slaves were emancipated, it was the Indian indentured labor, which, so doubly so, we are Black adjacent, but we are called white adjacent in America. And did we bring caste to America then? Did we carry it over those 8,000 miles when we came from India and to America and Canada? Not really. For 50 plus years, there has been no discussion around that, no data, no evidence, no real police complaints, and not enough, any legal cases really of significant nature to say that caste is extremely prevalent. So then why is this heightened media discourse going on? So Raginiji, if you can go to the next slide, I can talk about it from the point of view of two seminal books that talk about caste. Right? One is, of course, the very well-known book that was written by Isabel Wilkerson in 2020 called The Caste, The Origin of Our Discontent. And the other is Castes of Mind. Now, Castes of Mind was a book by Nicholas Dirks, who was Chancellor of Berkeley until a few years ago. And he had lived in India, and he has written a seminal book that talks of how caste in India is a product of the encounter between British colonial rule and India, right? So it was not really part of Indic identity, because caste is a Portuguese word and brought into India. It was imported into India. Obviously, it's not part of, even though now it has become common parlance, as he calls it, a central symbol of India. It is obviously an import into India. And the biggest victory, I always say, is when someone can define you, to defeat you physically or take your land or whatever is of course one part of the defeat. But when people are defeated in their mind, that and their identities are imposed on them, that this is who you are, that is the biggest victory. That is why Nicholas Dirks calls it the castes of mind. And that is why we have been continuously defined by caste, which is a foreign term imported into India. And, I will go into that a little bit more detail in the next slide, but to just go into what Isabel Wilkerson did, she connected America, India, and Nazi Germany and said that these are oppressive countries. These are like two big democracies, India the largest, America the oldest. And she took both of them and compared them to Nazi Germany and called caste the overarching theme that defines American society, as well as India and, of course, Nazi Germany. And I don't debate her. I have written a research paper on this, and there is a whole different meaning to the word caste, which is why we should be very, very careful when we define ourselves as casteist or caste-based society. And that is what we need to find a way to dissolve out of our, our identity. And that is something we really need to work hard on. Isabel Wilkerson also says that race is the skin and caste is the bones. Well, in reality, when I wrote the research paper and did my research, one of the things that I found out is that caste is actually blood purity. The more white your blood is, in the sense you come from white lineage, you are on a higher caste. That is how caste was defined, whether in Nazi Germany or whether in, Portugal, Spain, etc., or in America even, where everyone knows that infamous one-drop rule, when censuses used to record anyone who had even one drop of black blood as a Negro. So this is the kind of background of what caste really means, and it has been thrust upon us. But on the next slide, I just want to so this was sort of a backdrop that I wanted to show that, identity it came to India when the colonialists came, this whole identity complex of caste. India was the richest country at that time. India had, obviously it was called the Golden Birds, Sone ki Chidiya, it was called the land of milk and honey. And when we came to America, if we think about what America looked like, like there were you would not see beggars. I mean, it's a whole different world right now because you have so much, homelessness and poverty in some places because of illegal immigration, etc. But that's besides the point. America is the richest country today, just like India was the richest country in that time in the 1900s and in the 20th century. Then when there was the divide and rule policy that the British followed, how did they go about it? They went about it using the tool of the caste census. They did surveys and they found out, literally, there are serious studies and they talk very well of how Indian society was structured. It was non-hierarchical, it was fluid and mutative. These are words by eminent anthropologists of that time, Sennart and Ibbotson and others, who recorded before Risley came in and imposed the whole caste hierarchical structure and, trying to say metal workers are higher than the, basket weavers or potters, etc. But what I'm trying to say here is that they not only defined us by creating the caste census, but they defined some vocabulary. So they created labels to call us Dalit, Adivasi, even though they look like words that belong to India, they are not. They were created during the colonial times. The scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, the whole theory of Aryan Dravidian, which was a supremacist racial theory that also still they will not give it up. All of this was created, and who were the Dalits at that time? So that is it. I think the last point I want to do in the historical perspective is to at least understand how the Dalits were created. When I said that there were no beggars, every good economy is made up of a great middle class. And that great middle class was oppressed, suppressed, persecuted, denuded of their wealth by the British. When they destroyed the Indian economy, they extracted the wealth, they created criminal tribes, when entire groups of people were considered criminal because they rebelled against the British, that they were de-weaponized, to 80% taxation, and there were obviously man-made famines in which about 100 million Indians perished during the colonial times. So this is the story of what India became. And in the next slide, there is a graph which was created by a historian and economist called Angus Madison. And he recorded how, as Britain prospered, India kept coming down in rank and it lost its GDP from the 33% to about 2% or less by the time the British were exiting. And so that is the story of how India became poor, and when India became poor, how Dalits and the poverty, illiteracy kept and of course the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes groups were created in 1935 and before 1947 to actually embed in the constitution as the depressed classes. And who depressed them? Not the Brahmins. It was a perfect crime always has an alibi. And the British, when they denuded India of its wealth, persecuted the people, they actually created an alibi. And the Brahmin, the story of the evil Brahmin became the most important story for them, which is why that narrative still continues. Caste, even though a foreign term, continues to be part of the Indic definition, and like I said, the labels are what we need to really fight. So next slide. I just wanted to go to what's going on now. So when I say caste came to India when it was the richest country, and it's come to America when America is the richest country, when, we were really, no one was talking about caste until a few years ago, then India was created into this ethnographic state where they could divide and rule during the British colonial times to colonize India, to basically divide and rule, create fault lines. So it is pertinent to ask in that sense as to why caste is coming back here when actually, like I said, there's no real world evidence of caste, whether in Canada or in America. A single swallow does not a summer make. And, they're using hooks to create widespread media rhetoric. In America, what are the hooks on which caste hangs? Caste hangs on three major hooks. One is the false definition of Hinduism. Hinduism has been defined as not just the four varnas, but a fifth varna as Dalit, which is actually not part of our scriptures, avarnas. All these concepts are foreign concepts, and they are not part of our scriptural texts, the word Dalit. And yet, this is how they used this definition in Equality Lab's reports. They use this definition in the Civil Rights Department that filed cases, the Cisco case against two Indian managers. And this is, the Civil Rights Department, CRD, was forced to remove that definition after, we filed complaints. I think HAF filed a complaint, and Sundar Iyer filed a complaint, who is Sundar Iyer and Ramana Kompella, the two boys who were targeted in the Cisco case. So that is the forced definition of Hinduism. Second is the Equality Lab's report, which again has an unscientific, non-randomized survey behind it, which was thrown out of the courts. The court said this anecdotal report, anonymously reported, is not going to stand, the test of valid argument for caste evidence. And then, of course, the fabricated Cisco case, which jeopardized the careers of Sundar Iyer and Ramana Kompella. And it is a completely fabricated case where Sundar Iyer actually hired this guy who filed the case, despite him being his classmate, despite knowing that he's a Dalit candidate because he was his classmate, he knew his background, and yet he hired him. And then the same guy filed a case against Sundar Iyer and Ramana Kompella, who he reported to. And Sundar, interestingly, had promoted another Dalit candidate. He just happened to be a Dalit, but he was meritorious, so he promoted him. And he did, Chetan Narsude was the guy, John Doe, who filed the complaint against Sundar. And this fabricated case has now been dismissed completely. It has been recorded on castgate.org, a website that I helped create and build. So these three are the main ways in which caste is being built in America. And there is a false white adjacency attached to Indian Americans. So I think I sort of rest my story here. I don't know if there's one more slide, Ragini, but this is actually the story of how caste has come into India, into America rather. And then there are lots of different repercussions of these three pillars of caste. They call it lab survey, the Cisco case, and the false definition of Hinduism. These three are being used to then create campus resolutions, corporate workshops, political bills, and media academia discourses, surveys like the Equality Lab survey, and there's a couple more other surveys that have come out. But the political bills, I think it's important to, before I segue and hand it over to Raginiji, just talk about SB 403, which was a hard-fought battle in California when this bill was introduced. And Seattle obviously was the first one, actually. Seattle ordinance was the first one. It passed through, it was in the city, and nothing much has come out of it. It has not even been notified completely, as in, how the laws are supposed to be notified to utilize them. I don't think that has been done, though significant amount of funds have been used by the city. But in California, it is important to note that we were able to collectively, as Hindu Americans, even Sikhs joined us, many Sikhs joined us, many other communities joined us, and we were able to defeat that bill, which is a significant victory that I think Canada can have some hope and relief that there are various reasons why caste, because it targets Hindus, because of the way it is defined in dictionaries, because of the fact that it is void in terms of its vagueness, there is no real definition of caste. United Nations has not been able to define caste. It still hangs it on work and, other ancestry and those kind of categories. So caste is really a category that in the constitutions of Canada or of United Nations, it would really not stand the test of a review. If in the courts, at least, it can go through popular political vote, but not. So I think this is just to finish off on this topic, and maybe hand over to Raginiji to talk about what's going on in Canada, especially how is caste, moving there.
Thank you, Richa. That was fantastic. I just want to thank you for this excellent description of how we've gotten where we are. And so I just want to speak very, very quickly, because I want you to, truly give us your description of what your understanding is about your interview with Don Davies. So I'm going to work through these slides very quickly. The Caste motion has passed through TDSB. It is a historic win for Sadan and Professor, Jangam, who have been the force behind it, and with Equality Labs behind it. So I'm going to quickly show you that in February 8th, they passed this motion, which was clearly identifying Hindus and South Asians and the Caribbean, and they wanted to actually implement it by forming a committee made up of only caste Dalit activists, and they wanted to actually teach about this in their schools to the staff and children. How horrible is that? We fought it tooth and nail, and they ended up changing. These were our, I think we've done a session on this before. We objected to the whole term. We objected to the singling out of our community as inherently bigoted. There was no consultation. They had never received even a single complaint. So that's how artificial and ideologically based this whole motion was. Caste oppression, they called it. So CoHHE took a lead, and I have to thank the several local organizations and people of Toronto, parents who guided us. I'm grateful to Sohag Shukla for doing a Zoom consult like we're doing with you, Richa, today. And we had a huge campaign, as I've mentioned here. I'm not going to spend too much time because I want to hear from you, Richa. The caste oppression motion was amended because of the strong opposition. Thousands and thousands of letters went out and meetings happened. And they ended up sending it to Human Rights Commission for a response. So as Richa has already alluded to, there's a huge cabal. There's of people who are anti-Hindu, and they are promoting this ideology. It's ideological based. We've never had an incident here. There was one incident in BC between Sikhs, but really one incident doesn't prove this. But they keep claiming that if you come from India, then you are bigoted, which is a completely false narrative, which Richa has clearly said will not stand in court. So these are the heavyweights driving the motion. 200 professors sent in a letter, and we were bombarded on Twitter with all these false accusations of being Hindu supremacists. And all this, they even ended up putting wrong information online with the original motion. They didn't even know that the motion had been changed. That's how driven they are with their, mass emails that they send out for their poetic justice and all these people to give out false information. Audrey Truskay and, letters had gone out from Sikhs for Justice, World Sikh Organization, Indian American Council. I mean, you name it, they were all working on it. And they have been successful, although we defeated it being implementation in the school system, which I feel is a huge victory because it had been implemented in TDSB, which is the largest board in Canada. It would have been copy and pasted across all school boards. So we're very grateful that we were able to stop it, and kudos to our huge community effort. But in October, the OHRC did make a statement online that they recognize caste. There's a lot of problems in their statement. You can look it up, just Google it. And please make sure that you're muted. I hear somebody. The problem with that is that they, in their statement, they talk about which deity that caste can be understood by your last name, which deity you worship, and all of this nonsense, which is completely targeted towards Hindu. And as you will see, Richa, when she talked with Don Davies, he denies that it targets Hindu community. But when you look at what information they provided to the politicians to address caste, it's all based on India, and there's no proof that it's happening here. So this is a very, very disturbing trend, and we're still looking at how we should respond to it, and it is still work in progress. Over to you. Please go ahead, Richa. We look forward to hearing from you again. Thank you. You're on mute.
Yes. No, thank you so much, because, it just shows, I mean, when you talk of the key players, Shama Sawant, Audrey Truskay, as you know, that they all reside in United States. So our borders are porous, and we are basically, I'm trying to make myself on the spotlight. If that's, I just removed your spotlight. I'm not able to do that. All right, I got it. Yeah, I want to, it was, I think, a very, very, very interesting and very important opportunity that I got when a channel called Canem News Network approached me to interview Don Davies, and it was, I think it's very insightful, even though it was just about less than half an hour of conversation. It's very insightful to know how he has been misled into thinking about what caste really is and how Hindus are, or, of course he doesn't say Hindu, but what is what it really means, and how it's going to really help. So it's sad that this sort of misinformation is being spread around. And I think Salvatore Babanese, who is a professor and American, he has written about how there are a trifecta of Muslim, Dalit, and Sikh alliance, or Khalistani Sikh alliance, who are actually driving this in America as well as in Canada, and some of it in Australia as well. So this is actually, I think in Canada, it is showing up also similarly, that there is a Sikh, the case that is driving this is actually a Sikh on Sikh case. And I did talk to him about it. And I think what we have first is, the slide we have first is the motion, just so that briefly we can go over the points, which are actually very, very sort of like, I wouldn't say that they're very specific points, like it says, okay, it's an internationally recognized violation of human rights, which is actually only partially true, because caste, like I said, has not been really defined. So even whether it's the United Nations, Special Rapporteur, the reports, etc., they continuously do talk about it, but there is no real, rapporteur. It's a rapporteur for minorities, not for caste. So caste is not really a recognized issue. If it was a recognized issue in UN, they would have a rapporteur for caste itself, which they are trying to get. I've visited as a delegate the Human Rights Commission in Geneva, and attended their 52nd session. And of course, there were sessions on caste. So this idea that there is a need to sort of recolonize our children, our despite the fact that there is no real world evidence of caste in a identity in the diaspora, this is a very troubling matter. And it is something that our children need to be educated about, because they tend to assume that because it's being taught in textbooks, it is a written word, it is being discussed, it must be really true that, yes, my parents come with that hangover of caste, from their upbringing in India. But really, the fact of the matter is that this has not been proven anywhere. There is no significant data in Canada which has been quoted either in the motion by Don Davies. And all of the, like Raginiji clearly pointed out, all of the motions that were passed included slurs against Hindus, like Saab Dhaliwal who was a city councillor in Burnaby, targeted Hindus in his recorded speech and statement, which Don Davies refused to comment upon. And of course, Toronto, we had a tough fight, and much kudos to CoHHE and other groups in Canada who opposed it and got a significant victory. So caste-based discrimination, as he says, is a lived experience. This has become the big woke word, phrase, lived experience, but there is, again, no real world data or evidence. But instead of repeating myself, why don't we go into the very interesting conversation that I had with Don Davies? And, I asked him some questions, which as a skillful politician, he was able to skirt through very well, and he did not respond to any of them. Is caste covered under existing Canadian law? He said it is not, when actually, as we all know, it is. And that is how cases have been adjudicated, whether it was the Sikh case or in, any sort of discrimination based on ancestry and origin, country of origin are covered, So that case could have been solved, as someone told me, as a workplace harassment case. So it is really not necessary to bring caste, just as it was not necessary to bring caste during colonial times, except to create an ethnographic state that could be used to create fault lines and fissures. And Indians are being divided into this whole, upper caste, lower caste, to again divide and rule, to again recolonize us, and it has some connections to what's going on in India, and some connections to the world of wokeism that is also going on. That's a bigger topic. But when I asked him if caste is perpetrating Hinduphobia, like how, there's a rise in Hinduphobia, again, he said there's more Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. And, but he did make one good statement. He said that he's willing to consider Hinduphobia bill, but no one has approached him. So I guess that's something someone should take him up upon. Even the Ragini ji, if you want to chime in, that there was already some work done.
Thank you, Richa. That was a complete, I won't call it a lie, but that's misleading because, we had on February 2nd, MPP stood up and, Melissa Lassman stood up in the parliament and read out the petition, which 25,000 Hindus plus had signed asking the government of Canada to recognize Hinduphobia. And a letter had been sent out to each and every MP. So he cannot pretend that he's never heard of it. So that definitely won't buy that. Thank you.
Right. And I think he skirted through, someone had a hand raised if you want to chime in.
Yes, Richa, it's Ruchi here. So I thank you for sharing your perspective and everything. I don't have a question, just like a tiny bit suggestion. I think what I feel when I talk to the community members and everybody, like I'm part of CoHHE, of course. So what I feel is people don't understand, like if this bill is passed, what will it mean to them? And that is, I think, where we need to build the narrative, because people think like, okay, like if it's passed, so what is going to happen? What's the worst, or what's the worst that can happen to me or my kid in me in workplace or in a community, or my kid in the school? So I think if you can talk a little bit more about that, that will really help in getting it a wider acceptance that this is not right. If this happens, this is what is going to happen. Yes, we have a Cisco case that happened, but if you can talk a little bit more about how it's going to impact if it's passed, I think that will really help. And especially because we are recording this session, people can go back and we can revisit it.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Thank
So
you.
let's do a quick run through these questions. I think, you can catch that interview on CasteFiles YouTube also. Maybe we can link it up to this, recording later. So, but some of the points that I wanted to just raise, and Ruchiji, I will definitely address what you just said. And I'm sure a lot of us can talk about it. Maybe we can have a little discussion about that at the end. But one of the things he brought up is sexual orientation was added as into the Human Rights Act because it's a living, breathing document. I agree it is a living, breathing document, but sexual orientation belongs to it. It can be assigned to anybody. Whereas as far as caste is concerned, it is completely a label for Hindus. In any dictionary, any which way textbooks, you will see caste associated very strongly with Hindus. So that was one of his questions. The other questions he had was, if India has caste law, why can't Canada have it? Well, that is the whole problem with the fact that India had caste from the British. It is a colonial hangover from the British 1935 Act. So that is why it is embedded in the Constitution, and the depressed classes and the SC/ST and all. That is India's problem. We did not come to Canada so that Canada implements, new colonial laws for us. So I think that is a very important point to make, that there is no real world evidence, as well as India conducted very serious censuses to assign a caste to every single person. And is Don Davies willing to do a census, assign a caste to himself, assign a caste to every single person in Canada, and then apply the same kind of laws that India has? Well, that is a challenge that we should throw to him. And I think we've already discussed the bad faith actors, like Salvatore Babones has pointed out, who are weaponizing caste against Hindus in North America. So the very, very, difficult part for, we were short of time, but when Don Davies was talking about caste, he was talking about it as a composite identity, very specific to Indians, and where they have specific marital preferences, color of skin based discrimination, parental occupation, everything, a composite created a caste discrimination problem. And it's a socially odious practice. That's what he has been obviously educated. And that is the problem that we are facing, that we have these bad faith actors who are talking against Hindus and defining Hinduism, which was something that was, the court did not agree to this definition, but this is the definition that he's using. The courts in America completely threw that out. So this is just something to remember, that this will not stand. It's firstly a false definition, and it's not going to stand the test of reality. Do children know their caste? So again, that is one thing he brought out, that children go to their parents and ask, what is their caste? And obviously it is because it is being taught in textbooks. And that is, I think, the one place where we should also make very big efforts. We are doing that in the United States in pockets, like in Massachusetts, there's one effort which I'm part of, in California, in North Carolina. So we're doing this continuously, but there needs to be a consolidated effort to take out caste out of textbooks, because there is where the false definition of Hinduism really begins and impacts our children. And he's, of course, surprised that Hindus are upset, because by now they've learned their lesson, and they've not mentioned Hindus explicitly in the motion. His motion does not mention Hindus, but as we know, it still targets. And I think that's about it, in terms of what the key points of discussion and contention that we had. And he did not agree to most of the points that I made. He skillfully also, just navigated around them. But Hindu phobia motion also, I think, again, there is an anti-Hindu sort of sentiment that what we see in America is also exhibited in Canada. But I think coming back to Ruchiji's question, I think I would invite comments from others as well as to why is this important? If caste, suppose it is passed, so what's the big deal, right? So the big deal is that it will change the way we are perceived. That's the first thing, Indian Americans, when I first came here, Indian Americans are always perceived as those great with computers, great contributors to civilization. Hinduism is perceived as this, spiritual sort of religion. And we are also considered the law-abiding citizens. Just before all this started, Tom Friedman was writing about how the world is flat. There was this upsurge of how India is perceived in the world, and how it is contributing to the world economy in the IT, which is going to, obviously, with AI, and IT is becoming the big boom in the service sector in India and all that. So that was the story of India. And then suddenly the story of India is all about caste since 2018 or so. So that is the big problem that we face. First of all, is of how we are defined. The first thing when people look at us now is they literally have asked so many of our lead people that, what is your caste? Oh, you're Indian, Hindu, what is your caste? That is the first thing that we are going to continuously face, and our children have really no idea. When they go to school, there are children who have been bullied and told that, they are casteist and they are Hindu. These words are being used as slurs. There are courses that are being held. There are some programs being held. Our children are going to be brainwashed into thinking that they come from a bad religion, that is stratified in hierarchies that oppresses certain people, whereas all other religions are egalitarian and treat others nicely. Is that what we want? It is about how we perceive ourselves is the first thing. Second is, of course, how our careers will be impacted. Every time, if this goes on, this can, for example, a lot of us in the US come on H visa. There is a big movement and thought that, even the H visa should have a quota system of some Dalits coming in, some, there are discussions on that as well. So what is going on here is very, very dangerous, because it can impact the meritocratic environment in which we are coming, and it will bring a lot of problems for people who come here to build their careers. So that is the most important thing. I think someone wrote a question, and I invite comments also. I'm going to just remove the spotlight. So one of the questions was that, are we doing a big campaign? So it's a bit premature. Thank you for that question, because it's an important question. It's a good time to do the churn, to do the discussions internally, to understand how we are going to, fight it, because fight it we must, because it can impact our lives very deeply. And it's premature to do a campaign right now, only because this motion is just on notice right now. It has not gone onto the floor, not, and as you know, he's a private member, not a part of the, Ragini-ji, maybe you should talk about it more as to why it's premature to do a campaign like Swastika.
Thank you, Richa. That's been excellent, excellent. And I invite each and every person to watch that interview. When we post this video, we will post Richa's explanation of what harm it causes us. And I want to say a few words about that. Imagine yourself at work, community, social interaction. Imagine your children in school. Imagine them, as soon as they see a Hindu, they're going to see, oh, here's an oppressor. Here's a person who hates Black people and who oppresses others. Do you want this to be the first impression that you get, or response you get when you meet someone? Because this is what they're trying to do. And you already raised the issue of immigration. So they could very well are we proposing to ask what is your caste when you come in as an immigrant? Because you're already saying that everyone who comes from India is inherently bigoted and casteist. So these are the kind of horrible messages that prejudice people against Hindus. It's, Pandit Satish Sharma has called it the caste bomb. As soon as somebody asks you a question of caste, you know that you've been judged. They have a preconception, they have a prejudice and hate towards Hindus, and they look at you with suspicion. That is not, it's absolutely incorrect. First of all, we are the most peace-loving people, and we have provided great service as citizens to Canada. We are completely well integrated into the Canadian society. This is not the lens that we need to be looked at by a people. I want to mention that in their letters, Sadan and Professor Jengam, who's behind Sadan, which is the Dalit organization, they have written a letter to each and every politician in Canada, whether it's a school trustee, city councillor, MPP, MP. They have written a letter to each and every trustee to tell them that Hindus are casteist. In particular, they have mentioned in their letters and in the video interviews throughout media, which has been well publicized, their point is that namaste, yoga, vegetarianism, celebration of Diwali is all oppression of Dalits. So now you can see where they're going with this. Basically, Hindu Dharma is, in their opinion, oppressive and evil. So we should stop being Hindu. Their game and their plan is to completely deny that Hindus have a right to exist. This is an existential attack on our on us and the whole the Hindu community worldwide. And that is why this is a very, very serious issue that cannot be taken lightly. It will affect your work. You could be asked to your caste at work. Can you imagine the humiliation of our children who don't even know what this is about? So this is a direct attack on our identity. We have a right. The Canadian Charter of Rights allows us, the Human Rights Act allows us to express our identity freely, and we are being specifically targeted. No other religion or community is being specifically targeted because all laws are supposed to be facially neutral. This is not facially neutral. This is an attack on our identity, on our religion, on our tradition, and this should not be allowed. And Richa, you're right. It will not stand the test of the courts. So our challenge is to get it there. Thank you very much. And I'd like to open the floor for questions. We have a small group, so please go ahead. Thank you.
I think we have addressed any questions that were there in the chat. If anybody has comments or questions, you can raise your hand and then we'll just go in the sequence. So Ruchi, if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Ragini ji and Richa. I think you exactly hit the nail on the head, how it's going to impact us, because we'll face it everywhere we go. And one thing that I do want to point out is that when these bills are formed, there's a lot of cost that goes to it, because they are read once, they are read twice, then they are read thrice. And then if they come to implement, it creates a lot of taxpayer, it uses a lot of taxpayer dollars. And that is also something we should be worried about when we know how, what the situation in Canada is, where our economy is. We should be using our tax dollars wisely rather than our politicians, wasting our money, because it's our money, it's not their money, on these bills that hold no, that don't hold any ground. So that was just a comment, not a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruchi.
So if there's no, go ahead, Ruchi. Richa, go ahead. Otherwise, I was gonna go ahead.
I think there is a question in the chat box. Can we cite examples of books like scholastic book on Mother Teresa that perpetrate Hinduphobia, negative stereotypes about Hindus? So I think that's something we should definitely build a list, but I really don't know about this.
Yeah, we'll send you that information. Pooja has done a lot of work on it, and we're following it up on behalf of CoHHE and Pooja. Yes, she's with the Hamilton School Board, so she's working on excellent work she's doing. Yes.
Ragini ji, this is Archana.
Rachna, please go ahead.
I was thinking from CoHHE, can we make a poster, something like that, educating parents like this is happening? Because I think majority of them, as Ruchi said, they don't even know. So something which will give an information what's actually happening at the political ground and why it's dangerous for us. Like, I think it would be nice.
Richa and I can work on that. I'm sure Richa has some resources and we can do it. Yeah, that would be a good way actually to start addressing this obliquely. So,
like it can have a catchy line like, do you want others to ask your children what caste do you belong to? And then you can then build up the narrative. We have to build up the narrative, right? So if we do this way, तो ज़्यादा awareness आएगा मुझे लगता है कि क्योंकि nobody wants to bring up this topic here because we don't talk to our children, है ना? And then maybe people will be knowing कि ऐसा चल रहा है.
Yes, Archana is a wonderful supporter here as well, and she's very articulate. She herself has been bringing up issues to her own school on behalf of her children. She has an organization called Mokshadham. So we are willing to cooperate with all of our partner organizations and the whole community to put out an information. There is a very well-known poster put out by, I think, VHP that it's on spotting Hinduphobia. we should do something really powerful, Richa. Let's all work together to put out something to educate and like Ruchi said, we have to make it relatable, because people think, oh yeah, there's casteism in India. What's there's a lot of guilt there. So that, okay, so there, what harm is there to recognize caste? But it's completely different issue, and I think this whole session has been excellent in addressing why it's important. Thank you.
So Ragini ji, we will, as an action item, we will take it back for CoHHE to create a poster to build the awareness and spread the awareness and education about the dangerous implications of this bill. So let's work along with Richa and create that. And we can absolutely spread it across and float it.
Thank you. Pooja, you have your hand up?
Yes. So I had a question. One of the things that we can add in our posters is, one thing along with this caste motion is there's really no, like if you say in the community, in the Hindu community, in our places of worship, everybody is free to, enter our places of worship. Nobody is asked about their caste. We don't have like separate places of worship like maybe other faiths and communities do, based on the sects and the divisions that they have. So, I mean, this is frivolous. I mean, this is something that we can point out. Like, we celebrate all our festivals, all our important community events together, irrespective of, what background people come from. So why is this being made a big issue when we really don't have any segregation in our places of worship or our festival celebrations or anything of that sort?
Excellent point, Pooja. You're very good. Let's make a team. Yes.
Thank you, Pooja. We have a question from Shambhu ji, which says, what is required to challenge it legally? So I would just say, first thing is, obviously legal consultation needs money. So I mean, it would begin with the making donations. So please do visit CoHHE, CoHHE.org, CoHHE.org. And let's start making donations and build some financial strength for the legal battle. This might very well be a long one, so we definitely need that help. In addition to that, I think there are definitely, the legal consultation itself, we need the right resources and people. So I'll let Richa and Ragini ji chip in here.
I'd like to invite Richa for any closing remarks. This is just the beginning of our partnership, Richa. We feel very fortunate to have connected with you. And I think that we can do things together here. You're very knowledgeable, and you've got a lot of background information, which we don't have. And we really would look forward to a partnership along with many others. I think Suhag has contacted us also. She'd like to work with us. So, we need all hands on deck, because it seems that Canada is where they're getting the success, and we need the support from everybody across the world to fight this menace, which is totally uncalled for and unfair and unjust. Please go ahead, Richa. We'd love to hear your closing remarks. And then
Yes. Absolutely. And I wanted to give a shout out to Maggie Kumarji. She has also joined from California. She was an integral part of our fight against SB 403, where we challenged it at every which level. We challenged it, in the legislative, in the assembly, with the governor. So that is where we had a victory. And of course, legal is where it is at. Actually, the understanding of these motions, these bills, these laws is so important, because for us, we usually have never got into that side of that side of the fight till now. But with the caste issue, yes, that is going to be very important. And that is where I think we are protected a lot, because the constitutions in America and Canada have very strong, equal opportunity and equal rights value systems. So that is the courts really are where we'll be helped the most. But we have to fight for every inch, because Canada has a lot more citizens. In US, we don't, we don't have, a lot of us are on temporary visas in US. But Canada, definitely there is strength in numbers. Hopefully that'll help, to be vocal. We need to educate people so they join the movement, I think.
Thank you so much. And we will definitely be pursuing the legal channel. We're getting organized, and we will be consulting and bringing our community together because, as Deepti mentioned, lawyers cost money, and we need very good lawyers. Thank you, each and every one of you, for joining. You are all part of this. We cannot do this alone. The whole community needs to come with this, as we have been. We wouldn't have been able to achieve the success at TDSB had we all not come together. And the Hinduphobia motion in the House of Commons also was because of all our collaborative work. So let's all join hands and prove to the world that Hindus are the only ones in the world who talk about Vasudeva Kutumbakam, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Let's pray for peace, and may the truth prevail. And we will address all social evils, including caste. We're not supporting caste at all, but this bill and motions are attacking Hindus directly, and we need to stand up for ourselves. Thank you very much for all of you coming, and have a great day. We will be posting this video with some links, and so please share widely.
Thank you, everybody. We'll be
Thank
live.
Thank you.